Hello everyone, and welcome back to another GIS lecture video. And in this lecture video, I want to cover the concept of single-part versus multi-part vector data. So in some of the previous videos, right, we talked about this idea of the geometry being a set of coordinates representing an underlying feature. And I want to propose to you a scenario here where we have, and I'm going to do my best to draw this here. Right, we have the Hawaiian Islands. Right, so these are the Hawaiian Islands, right? Now I want you to think for a second about the geometry of the Hawaiian Islands, right? That we've drawn here. Now, clearly, right, we have one. I'm going to number these. One. Let's use a different color. Right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different polygons. Right, so 5 different islands. Right, 5 different polygons. Now here's the question, right? Does this make S-E-N-S-E sense? Does this make sense? Now, from a geometry standpoint, it absolutely makes sense, right? We have a series of coordinates, right, for one polygon, forming a closed loop. We have a series of coordinates, right, for a second polygon, right, forming a closed loop. For a third polygon, fourth polygon, fifth polygon, and so on. So from a geometry standpoint, absolutely, it makes sense that if we have 5 different regions, we need 5 different polygons. But think about this, right? If we were to want to map Hawaii, right? If we wanted to map out Hawaii, right? All of these islands are Hawaii. Hawaii. A-I-I. There we go. Hawaii. Oh, there should be an A there too. Hawaiian. So, would it make more sense then to have all 5 of these islands be, shall we say, grouped together under a single feature called Hawaii? right? Should all 5 polygons be a single feature? Right? So if we were to select this, if we were to search for Hawaii, should we get all 5 of these? Or should we have to select each one individually? Right? This difference between having each polygon be its own feature versus having multiple polygons represent a single feature is the difference between Singlepart versus Multipart. Okay. So let me make this definition a little bit more clear. Right. So we are talking about Singlepart versus Multipart. Okay. The idea here being that with Singlepart, right, with Singlepart, what happens is each distinct polygon is its own record slash feature. So what do I mean by that? So let's go ahead and let's quickly grab our little diagram of the, let's grab our diagram of the Hawaiian Islands again. Plop them down here so that we can talk about them more clearly. Right, so we'll talk more about the attribute table in the next video. But for now, right, if you remember back to when I was describing vector data initially, when I was talking about points, right, as I said that each feature or each real-world object had its own row in a table. So for Singlepart, right, what would happen is this polygon 1 right, would be its own feature. And just for sanity's sake, we'll say that there's an attribute. Again, we'll talk about attributes in just a moment here. But let's just say each attribute has its own column state. So in this case, right, I'm going to abbreviate here by saying that we will have Hawaii being abbreviated HI, just to keep the difference clear here, right? So in this case, right, there would be a row for polygon 1, there would be a row for polygon 2, HI, there would be a row for polygon 3, HI, there'd be a row for polygon 4. Not IH. Let's try that again. HI. There'd be a row for polygon 5. HI. Right, so with a Singlepart vector data, each distinct set of geometry, I should clarify, this could be line or point. It's not just polygon. I should be clear here, right? Singlepart vector data is any of the geometry types. But the idea is that each distinct piece is its own record or feature. So even though all 5 of these islands are Hawaii by state, right? Each one is going to be its own record in the table. So that's Singlepart. Now let's contrast that. I'm going to go down slightly with Multipart. So with multipart, right, multiple geometries, multiple points, lines, or polygons that represent, let's see if I can actually spell represent here, that represent a real world feature, object, to be clear, object, are grouped into a record, are grouped into one record slash feature, right? So instead of having polygon 1 being its own with a state, polygon 2 being its own with a state, what would happen is we would just have, right, feature 1 with state Hawaii, and if you selected feature 1, you would get all 5 of the islands at once. So rather than having each polygon be its own record in the table, we have one record in the table that is being recognized or visualized using 5 separate polygons. Okay? Hopefully this makes sense. And again, we'll look at a sort of realistic example in ArcGIS Online in a little bit. But the goal here between single and multi-part is that single part means if it is its own set of coordinates, it's its own record in the attribute table, regardless of how it relates to everything else. In multi-part, what happens is you have, hey, these 5 things here are all related to the state of Hawaii. I'm going to make them all one record under the guise of the state of Hawaii. And if you need the state of Hawaii, I'm going to give you all 5 of these geometries instead of having each geometry be a separate record. Hopefully that makes sense. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you.